Chapter 14. Death of Nellie Woods. At the C7, several from the cowboys from Texas come with the cattle. 4 stayed and worked, and the others headed right back home. Sam Hawkins was one of who stayed about 2 months, then quit. He was a very good rider and wanted better wages than the other hands. He figured himself to be a bit extra. I had little use for him, so he was put in the high gainer at his boss. When Mr. Hardy came back from a trip from Chicago, Sam hit him up for a bossing job. He was told that there was no opening, and he decided to leave and go back to Texas. He gave us a little excitement before he left. Mr. Pence was at the ranch, and most of his cowhands were around when Sam decided he wanted to have his picture made while riding a pigeon horse. He picked on a Roan PX that Montana Slim had ridden the year before, and I had only been the one to ride him since. Slim had lost his job for getting drunk and neglecting his duties. Sam asked Mr. Hardy if he could ride the roan, and he was given permission. I had the horse wrangler bring him up and told the boys to get ready for some fun. Sam had one of the boys ear the roan down while he saddled him, then mounted. He just thought he would sit tall in the saddle for his picture. He hit the horse for the first jump he made, and struck him for the second, but was too high above the horse to reach him. When he hit the ground, he hit on his feet standing straight up. Everyone laughed at Sam and told him I could ride the roan. Sam bet Mr. Hardy $50 I couldn't ride that horse. If I did ride him, Mr. Hardy was to share the 50 with me. I stepped up the horse, pulling off the bridle as I went by him. He went after me for all he was worth. Around the corral 3 times we went to the cowboys yelling from all directions. I was using Sam's quirt with all my might. Someone opened the gate, and we went out. The maddened brute headed straight for the Hay Creek, and about 200 yards from the corral. He missed the crossing on the creek by about 30 yards, and we hit the bank, stopped dead, and I plunged headlong in the bottom of the creek, all spread out like a bullfrog. I was expecting him to try to jump the creek, but he stopped and watched me make a bullfrog dive into 4 feet of water. When I came back to the corral, Mr. Pence and Mr. Hardy had to take my picture as I was wet and muddy as a drowned rat. Sam was willing to give up the money since I'd whipped the horse for 50 or 60 yards after he had gone through the gate, and had thrown up his head and was running when he came back to the creek bank. We called off the bet, and Sam left that day. Soon after, I got a letter from my parents saying that they had left the old home and were living in Gaines County near my old little ranch. After hearing from them, I had the worst state of homesickness I ever had. I dreaded the coming of cold winter again in Dakota. No winds blow colder than the Dakota blizzards. I thought of poor John and the cowboys who had frozen the winter before. I also learned from their letter that Myrtle Ashley had married and settled down on the farm. I never did drink or play cards, but things were slow as I ambled into Lemon. I hadn't been there long when I saw a young punk kicking the daylights out of an old man who weighed about 215. The young man was drunk and just wanted to pick a fight. I had seen the beginning of the fracas and didn't like the difference in ages, so I knocked the bully chap flat on his back, putting him to sleep by using my quirt on his head. This caused a bit of excitement for the young fellow, who had 2 chums that thought he would be the first to whip me. I saw another man whisper something to them, and they changed their minds fast. I learned later that the 2 were not so fast with the gun, had been told I was, so they decided to leave. I helped the old man to his feet and went on looking around the town with nothing in particular to do. While I was gone, some of the boys had gone to the settlement to dance. They had been served some pumpkin pie and talked on and on about how good it was. They even mentioned they wished they could have some of it out at the ranch now and then. One of the ladies heard them talking and asked her husband to take a load out to the ranch to sell. Then the couple visited the ranch I was still gone, and Mr. and Mrs. Hardy were away. The boys had been drinking and celebrating, and were so pretty well organized. The poor old farmer drove up to the ranch hands and offered his load for sale. The boys just made fun of him and his pumpkins. They said something about how they liked the pies at the dance, and thought his wife might like to buy some pies from him. The cowboys thought the farmer should just dance for them. They made him jig around while he would slow up a bit, or wasn't dancing to one suit him. They'd shoot at his feet, and he would get a little faster each time. They nearly danced the poor man to death before they let him stop. When they did let him stop, he was tired and hot, and his tongue was hanging out. He could scarcely get back to his wagon. The boys told him to get a move on, and one of them took the back end gate of the wagon. The road crossing Hay Creek was very rough. The bank on either side was long and pretty steep. When he started up the bank, his wagon started rolling everywhere. The boys started shooting at him and whipping the team into a dead run. He didn't stop to gather his lost pumpkins. When he was over the hill and out of sight, the boys carried all those pumpkins into the potato cellar into the kitchen. When I got home that night, I found three of the boys trying to bake pies. Things were in a horrible mess. The boy had gotten the end of his nose shot off by one of the flylight and had tried to shoot it off. One of the other men had finished the job with a razor so as to not spoil his looks. They had used salt and oil to stop the blood and tied it up with a flour sack and thought he would do fine. They thought if he drank lots of the bug juice, he would get well. I learned the terrible truth about the pumpkins and felt ashamed for all their mistreatment of the man and his fine wife. The next morning I took the poor boy where he could get medical aid and told the doctor I would pay his bill to hold it from his wages. He lost about 10 days off the job for that drunken spree. I hunted up the farmer and paid him for the load of pumpkins and thanked him for his trouble and told him it never would have happened if I had been at the ranch. The farmer and his wife told me I didn't seem to be rude like the other cowboys, and they wanted to attend their church some Sunday. I hadn't been to church in many years, except the time I decided to sleep in one, so I told them I would visit them in one Sunday. A few weeks later, I went to the little church house and really enjoyed the good songs and prayers. The preacher was a middle-aged man and a fine person. I introduced myself to him after the preaching and told him I worked for the C7. I invited him to come to the ranch sometime to preach to the boys. I told him all we ever had at the ranch was a stag dance once in a while to keep them in practice. He laughed and asked if I'd like to dance. I don't do much dancing myself, but I'd like to play the fiddle and others stood around. A young woman standing near us spoke up and asked me if I'd played by note or by ear. I told her I played mostly by ear and that I used the notes since I had a scale and notes on my violin. I've been trying to learn to play by notes. Do you think you could help me? I told her I would be glad to try. I warned her I wasn't much of a music teacher since I had mostly learned from my dad. We hunted her dead in the crowd, and when she introduced us, I found he was the old gent I'd defended in Lemon when the husky punk had tried to kick his sides after getting a little dog drunk. I told his daughter, Nellie, all about how I'd taken his side by the fight and probably saved his life. Their name was Woods. They invited me to their home that night. I spent most of the day next morning teaching Nellie Woods how to read notes and the scale on her new violin, but with the setting of the sun, I told them I had to go back to work. I promised Nellie I would visit her as often as my work would allow. I was trying to make it to her home on Sunday or during the week if I happened to be riding in that part of the range looking for strays. Nellie learned fast. I took my old fiddle to her place and just left it. Then when I got the chance to play for a dance or gathering, I would go by and get Nellie, and off we would go. Nellie was a highlight of my stay in Dakota. I wrote my folks back home about her and how happy I was since I'd met her. The rest of the year, 1910, flew by. It was a few days after New Year, 1911, when I received a letter asking me to attend a dance about 30 miles west from where Mr. Woods lived. The dance was to be held in Wyoming at the home of a sister of Mr. Woods. I was not personally acquainted with Mr. and Mrs. Brown, who had written me, but the dance and supper at the ranch was to be the 1st of February, and they wanted me to bring Nellie with them. We were to play the dance, so I wrote that I would be there if nothing unforeseen happened to change my plans. I wasn't sure I could go because my work was so demanding at the particular time. The snows had been particularly heavy and had fallen early. I kept busy gathering cattle for my feed pens and seeing that the hands of the ranch did their work. Mr. and Mrs. Hardy were in Chicago, and that gave me double work to do. I made arrangements for the time came of the dance, and I hitched the team to a light sleigh and headed for the Woods home. I found Mr. and Mrs. Woods preparing to go, but Nellie told us she felt something bad would happen if she went. She begged her mother not to insist. I told her I would take care of her, and I too insisted that she go. She wanted to stay with her married brother until he came back, but we all gathered her belongings and hurried her on with us. She mentioned to me that the way she had a premonition of danger, and that she was going against her will, and all the way Nellie remained thoughtful and quiet. The weather was fine, the snow was firm, and away we sped over the hills and plains, but I could not cheer up my little Nellie, try as I would. She told me we were taking our last ride together, and I saw a tear glisten on her small face. I promised her I would stay in the house and give her my pistol and let my uncle sleep it until I was ready to go home. She just sighed and snuggled close to me. Everything was going well until about 3:30 in the morning when someone caused a disturbance among the boys on the outside of the house. Most of the cowboys had gotten mighty drunk. Some couldn't stand straight enough to dance, so they had gone outside for air. Mr. Woods and Mr. Brown and four older men had taken the job of keeping peace. They had ordered 7 or 8 of the boys to leave the dance. They had all got their sleighs and all 3 horses were leaving when something apparently detained them. Nellie and I were in the corner of the room, tired, but playing soldier's joy, and the dancers were in the middle of the set when my violin was suddenly knocked from my shoulder and splinters flew from it, hitting me in the face. When I glanced over at Nellie, I saw her falling. I caught her in my arms, and she slumped forward in the chair. She looked into my face and seemed to say, "I told you so," though her pretty lips never moved. She died instantly in my embrace. I called her name only once, then I knew it was over. A bullet from a .45 gun had been fired from the outside, coming through the double walls of the house. It hit my violin, knocking it from under my chin, and had pierced her heart. I carried Nellie from the room and put her on a bed and sent someone to get Mrs. Woods. I closed her beautiful eyes, folded her hands, and asked her to forgive me. I headed for the outside to find out who had fired the fatal bullet. I met her father on the porch and told him what had happened. I could not find my pistol and couldn't borrow one, nor could I find out who had fired that shot at Nellie. A bunch of the boys had fired in all directions, and when they left the dance, but when we overtook them, they all denied firing towards the house. Probably one who did fire to the house didn't realize he had done so, since they were all drunk. I rode back toward the house with deep sorrow burning in my heart. I drove the team that took Nellie to her final resting place. After the funeral, I stayed with her family that night, then left the next morning for the C7. I've never played the fiddle since.